My name is Gavin Evans, and this is my video where I talk about all the Blu-rays I bought in the past month. So let's begin with the Equalizer trilogy. Now, I thought the first movie started off really strong, but then the movie just dips in quality for the second half. I thought Chloe Grace Moretz was the best part of the movie, and without her, it just lost its emotion. The second movie, I found the first bit to be very boring, but the last act of the movie is really strong. I love the climax of this movie. I thought Pedro Pascal was great, so that one ends up being fine. The third movie is the reason why I bought this set is because I really liked the third one. I thought it was easily the best of the three. It's brutal. It's a really well done story, and it's just about trying to find closure in life. I was surprised at how much better the third one was than the other two, so I bought this set as a result. Then we've got Night Swim, which seems to be the movie that I'm the only person who liked. Everybody hated this movie. Many called it one of the worst horror movies they've seen, and I think that's just insane. Like, it's all subjective, but if you don't like this movie, that's fine. Whatever. I disagree, but fine. But to say it's terrible, like, it just feels like a weird movie to hate so passionately. It's really campy at times, which I enjoyed. It's never scary, which is the movie's biggest issue, but it's beautifully shot, and I just love the vibe of it. It just captures this nice nighttime swim feeling, and I do like that. And I also like it when movies have an effective sacrifice. So yeah, but it's not great. I've got issues with it, but I think it's an enjoyable, harmless movie. Then we've got one of my favorite movies of all time. I love this movie with every bone of my body, and it's Brain Dead. This is Peter Jackson's masterpiece. I think this movie is so insane in the best way possible. Like, it's really bloody. Like, this is one sick and twisted and disgusting movie. But there comes an eventual point where it's just so over the top that you can't stop but, like, you can't help yourself but laugh at it. And it's just so absurd. Like, it is just, it's something else. Like, you have to see this movie to believe it. And I think there are some great psychological elements. I think there are some great quotable lines. I kick ass for the Lord. Like, it's just great. This is in my top 30 of all time. If you haven't seen it, I can't recommend it enough. Then we've got G.I. Joe: The Rise of Cobra, another movie that everyone seems to hate, which I've always enjoyed. It's like a Saturday morning cartoon brought to life in just a very entertaining manner. You've got some fun action set pieces. It's really goofy, like ice sinks at the end of this movie, but I have fun with it, so yeah. Then we've got Noah. This movie is great. It is one of the weirdest, most ambitious blockbusters to ever exist. Like, the first half is this big, epic action movie, but the second half is a psychological horror story, and it's just so intense, so unnerving. I love the music in this movie by Clint Mansell. I love the visuals. It's just a really ballsy movie, and I think there's lots of profound messaging in it. So yeah, and the performances are great. This is one of Emma Watson's best performances. Like, if you don't know the direction the story takes in the second half, like, it is terrifying stuff. So it's like an action movie, but it's kind of like a horror at the same time. I know, I love it. Darren Aronofsky, I'm reviewing a bunch of his movies later this year, but you'll see that I'm a big fan of his. Then I got The Cell with Jennifer Lopez, and I remember liking this movie more than I actually do. Like, I just watched it, and it's like Hellraiser meets Inception, but they focus too much on the serial killer's past, and it just kind of lost me. Like, it's also pretty slow. There's still some cool visuals, and I like enough of this movie, but yeah, it's definitely flawed. It's mediocre at best. Then we've got another movie that I love a lot more than everyone else, and it's Knowing. I just rewatched this movie. I'm gonna go ahead and say it. I think this is a perfect movie. It's a very engaging mystery at the start, but then it turns into a thrilling disaster movie, and then by the end it turns into a sci-fi fantasy. And there's lots of different ways to view this story. Is it biblical or otherworldly? And just everything with the main character and the arc he goes through, I think there's some real emotion. I think it's ambitious. I think it's visually stunning. And it's just, it's honestly an amazing movie. It deserves way more love. So, yeah. And the ending is just, not to give anything away, perfection. Speaking of underrated movie, Bridge to Terabithia. I remember when I first watched this movie, I was expecting something like Narnia, a fantasy action movie, and I was really confused that it wasn't this movie at all. I don't want to give anything away, but I'll just say there's a point in the movie, well, just... I know, it's one of those movies that's difficult to talk about. I think this is a very profound, a very beautiful, and a very heartbreaking movie. It's a lot better than given credit for. In fact, I think this is one of Disney's best movies ever, period. Yeah, like it's a little cringy because you're watching kids play make-believe for so much of the movie, but when it needs to have weight, boy, does it ever. This was one of the first movies that truly devastated me. It's incredible. Highly recommended. And Anna Sophia Robb, she was such a great actress. What happened to her? Like, what was the last movie she was in? I think I've seen her in something recently, but I liked her in this, in The Way Back. What else? Soul Surfer. That's a good movie as well. Speaking of Noah, that's another good Christian movie. So, yeah, Bridge to Terabithia, great. Speaking of other underrated Disney movies that don't get the recognition they deserve, everybody is wrong about The Lone Ranger. I love this movie. Like, first of all, we've got Armie Hammer and Johnny Depp, two very non-controversial figures carrying this movie. We're never getting a sequel, are we? But I do think they give good performances. I think the movie is very entertaining. I love the world building. But the musical score by Hans Zimmer is simply outstanding. It is emotional, it is thrilling, it just elevates this movie in every sense. And the action scene at the beginning is great. The climax of this movie is some of the greatest action put to film. I've watched it so many times and I never get tired of it. It is just everything a movie like this should aspire to be. I love this movie. I think it's a blast. I think it's one of the most underrated blockbusters ever. I picked up some good ones. And to end it all off, I just bought this movie, Lisa Frankenstein. This movie is just fantastic. It completely bombed at the box office, and it's a real shame because I think this is something special. Zelda Williams' direction is just top notch. I love the look and feel of this movie. It kind of looks Tim Burton-y, but it has its own sensibilities. I think Catherine Newton is phenomenal in this movie. She has so much range and so much personality. Cole Sprouse, I think, does a really good job. And I also saw Carla Gugino did a really fantastic job, too. I think there's some real emotion in this movie. There's one scene where she's talking to the dead guy, and she's just talking about how time heals all things, but it actually just makes things worse. And I thought that scene had a lot of emotion behind it. I love how weird and bonkers it gets. Honestly, still my favorite movie of 2024, and I really. Oh, and the outfits in this movie, perfection. So, anyways, yeah, great months for movies for me actually. But have you seen any of those movies? What do you think about them? Let me know in the comments down below. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Stay tuned for more videos soon. And Gavin out.